color coding is the same here. The represent the responses given by families of children with other disabilities. We found that families of children with autism faced more attitudinal barriers in their communities. Race-related issues were not an issue. Were not so much an issue when you compared it to attitudinal barriers in terms of how they were discriminated. Because families were predominantly minorities, I believe it could be of two reasons. One is because families were predominantly minorities living in inner city areas. So I guess they're in some ways not a minority in that community. They are the majority in urban inner city areas. Worse than race-related issues? I don't know. Two thoughts on that. Now I go on to my third figure. In this figure, what I tried to do is I compared the experiences of these two groups of families by the 6 dimensions that I talked about. So what I found is everyone thinks it's very important to be involved in their communities. Importance rating was high. So on a scale of 0 to 5, where 1 is like least important, I'm not interested in interacting in my community, to 5 being yes, it's that almost everyone thinks yes, it's somewhat to very important to participate. It's not a question of is it important or not important. Irrespective of diagnosis, everybody wants to be participating. But when you come to opportunities, it's going down. The mean value drops to about 3, which means 3 is like the neutral category. You're neither satisfied nor dissatisfied, which I think a lot of people go for. In my own interpretation, if you say you're neutral, you're probably saying you're dissatisfied. So you can see that opportunities are less. Children with disabilities or children with other disabilities, but statistically we couldn't find a significant difference in that small difference that we found, as in how much effort do I take to go out and participate in different activities. That's what the word initiative means. In terms of attainment, it has 2 little stars next to its word on the slide, because what it means is the degree to which I'm able to interact with my community is actually different for these 2 groups that I studied. Families of children with autism had a significantly low ability, that is their view of the future. In the future, so the question read something like this. In the future, do you expect the level of community interaction to improve, stay the same, or decline? Most people said about stay the same, irrespective of their diagnosis. When it came to satisfaction, again, if you look at the picture closely, you can see that families of children with autism were a little bit less satisfied than families of children with other disabilities. But the difference was not of statistical significance. Seen that families are having a hard time finding adequate opportunities to interact and actually go out and physically interact. Mind you, I never asked the question about virtual communities, and perhaps in my next round I would ask that. So what does that mean? Overall, all families reported low levels of community participation, although it was important to their family quality of life. The differences in participation and discrimination were not significantly higher by diagnosis. I'm going back to the earlier slides, figures I opportunities and initiative being taken to interact. This picture that I want to show you is some analysis that I did mathematically. And this is a simple overview of it. For those of you who are familiar with it, it's called path analysis. And I used the AMIS software to run a structural equation model because we were interested in how do these dimensions interact with each other. We know that they're all important. Primary outcome measures. We know that attainment and satisfaction are just like the tip of the iceberg. There are many things that influences your attainment and satisfaction in life. And we're slowly doing this for each of the life domains in the survey. Domain of community, what we found is that initiative that you take can explain about a large portion of it had a large effect on attainment. The 0.61, the number that you see on the arrow between initiative to attainment, where 1 is maximum effect and 0 is low effect. A number of 0.5 or higher or closer to 1, the higher the effect. That's all you need to know to kind of interpret these figures. And so even though initiative was the only factor that had a direct effect on attainment, and hence indirectly it has an effect on satisfaction, we find that importance is an opportunity. They have an indirect effect on an indirect effect on attainment and satisfaction through initiative. Where I say good model fit. So what that means is the theoretical model that I proposed, when I tested it with my data, it has a good fit. So it's not just what I think. I can mathematically say that this makes sense. And I'm going to go back to that in words if you didn't follow that in figure. Attainment is the only predictor of satisfaction with community interaction. But opportunities and importance are crucial explanatory dimensions. People you're working with. Keep in mind that program evaluations should not rely only on satisfaction data. We need to be looking at multiple indicators. That's one of the first lessons I learned. If I just ask people how satisfied you are, I'm not getting the whole picture. I need to take a few back and ask, whatever that intervention I did with you, or what I want to study with you, how important is that to your life? And then go on and ask questions about, do you have adequate opportunities to get what you want? And then how much initiative are you taking to acquire that? Tested fact in the literature that certain people groups may not want to interact in the community for certain historic reasons, but unless we actually ask the people directly that and collect data, we have no way of knowing what people with disabilities or people from a certain people group really want. And that's why these questions should directly be asked from large numbers of people. On a practical level, what does that mean? Further explorations are needed on why there was low community attainment for families of children with autism. Problems, and therefore they need both practical and informational help to find ways to interact in their local communities. It is important to their overall family quality of life. And to me, this is not just data-based. I also have a personal experience because I am a parent of 3 children, one of whom has autism. So seeking out community interaction is not an easy task. I can totally relate to all the data that was collected. So in conclusion, any study has strengths and weaknesses. I'm moving into that. It was just a sample of convenience. So as in it may not be truly representative of all families of children with disabilities, because I got all volunteer mothers. So the very fact that these parents or families even came for my interviews or could take 2 hours out of their busy day meant that perhaps their disability is not so severe, or they are in a good frame of mind that they have the time to sit down and share with me 2 hours of their life. In 2 hours, what they've been going through. It was not a randomized sample. I cannot say that this is representative of all families. Plus the fact that most of them were mothers. Where are the fathers? Where are the siblings? Where are the grandmothers? A family is not just mothers, so that's a big weakness. We need to know more from multiple families. Some research that has been done on dads and moms in the same family, and they find that there is differences in the way parents, or even between parents, how they perceive quality of life to be different. Despite these limitations, findings from that brings me to the end of my presentation. And if you're really interested in more details about this, it was published as a book chapter. And it's titled Families of Children with Autism and Developmental Disabilities, a description of their community interaction. It was published in a book edited by Dr. Carey and Richard Scotch. And the series is called Disability and Community. Research in Social Science and Disability. It's volume 6. That will give you more into
Preeti, I want to thank you. This is Gentle. When I first heard you present this information at a conference recently, I was really impressed by the passion that you showed for this topic. I'm really glad you were able to transmit that passion to our audience today. You did a great job of making your statistical reports